What if the story you'd been writing for decades suddenly ended without your permission? What if the life you spent years carefully curating broke open, not with a bang, but a quiet, devastating silence? Hi, and welcome to Narrated by Abby, where true stories reveal the quiet power of becoming. If you believe that life's second acts can be deeper, braver, and more beautiful than the first, subscribe now. Because today's story is about Catherine Davies, and how she went from the edge of collapse to the center of her own canvas. Catherine was the kind of woman who made life look effortless. She moved through the world with the quiet elegance of someone who knew her place, not out of arrogance, but from decades of devotion. Her husband, Richard, was a prominent barrister, brilliant, magnetic, always slightly distracted. Her two children, Emma and Julian, were thriving, one at Cambridge, one living abroad and working in tech. And Catherine was the steady heartbeat behind it all. The Georgian townhouse in Chelsea, with its polished antiques and sunlit kitchen, wasn't just a home. It was a monument to her years of silent labor. She organized everything, not just birthday parties and holidays, but the intangible structure of their lives. The warmth, the rituals, the peace. What no one saw was that Catherine had once had dreams of her own. Before marriage, she'd studied fine art. She used to paint in the early mornings, oils under her fingernails, lost in colors that spoke truths words never could. But one exhibition turned into a wedding. One sketchbook was shelved for a baby monitor. And slowly, gently, she traded her brush for the work of love. Making a home, holding a family together, caring for everyone but herself. For years it was enough. She believed in what she'd built. She believed in Richard, even as he drifted further into his work. She believed that one day when the children were grown, she'd pick up where she left off. But then came the unraveling. At first it was easy to ignore. A cooler tone, missed dinners, a strange perfume she didn't wear. Richard had always been busy. Now he was absent. Catherine asked once. He said, "Just stress." She didn't ask again, but silence has a way of sharpening the truth. Late-night messages, cancelled weekends, slips of language that didn't quite add up. When the truth arrived, it wasn't shouted. It was spoken, calmly, rationally, across the kitchen table where they'd once made decisions about paint colors and holiday destinations. "There's someone else," he said. "It's been going on a while." She stared at him. "I didn't plan it," he added, as if that softened the betrayal. The divorce was swift, efficient, just like Richard. Their friends were polite, some reached out, most disappeared. The townhouse, the only thing she kept, felt like a tomb. The charities she worked with sent well-meaning emails. "Take time for yourself." The children checked in. Emma offered to move home. Catherine told her no. She didn't want witnesses to her unraveling. She wandered London for hours, sat on benches by the Thames, watched life continue around her with casual cruelty. She told herself she was fine, but inside, she was hollow. Her days blurred. Toast, tea, silence, repeat. She took long, slow baths she didn't enjoy. Read books she couldn't remember. Watch television at low volume, not out of respect for others, but because the sound of joy felt foreign. She avoided mirrors, avoided people, avoided herself. It was on one of those aimless afternoons, gray, drizzling mid-February, that she ducked into an art supply shop in Notting Hill. The bell above the door jingled. The smell hit her instantly. Turpentine, linseed oil, paper, pigment. It was like stumbling into a memory. She didn't plan to buy anything, but she left with a canvas, a set of brushes, a small box of watercolors and a tin that clicked shut like a secret. It felt dangerous. That night in her spare room, once a guest room then storage, she set up a makeshift studio. She didn't light candles or play music. She didn't prepare, she just painted. Not carefully, not beautifully, just freely. Red, deep blues, harsh lines, soft curves. It wasn't a landscape, it wasn't a portrait, it was emotion. Laid bare, raw, honest. When she stepped back, she cried. For the first time in months, not out of despair, but release. It became a ritual. Each morning, she woke early, earlier than she had when the children were small, made coffee, and painted. Some days she sat for hours and barely touched the brush. Other days, she finished 3 canvases before noon. She didn't tell anyone. It was hers. A secret garden blooming in the wreckage of her old life. One day, Emma came home for a weekend visit. She found the studio. At first, she was quiet, studied the pieces, the boldness, the movement. Then she said, "Mom, these are incredible." Catherine shrugged. They're messy. Emma smiled. So are you right now. That's okay. Bit by bit, word spread. Her friends stopped by, curious, supportive, surprised. One of them, an old school friend who now worked in the art world, offered to connect her with a gallery. Catherine laughed it off, but her friend persisted. And then, an invitation. The gallery was small, Mayfair. Known for emerging voices, they wanted to host a show. Solo. The thought of it terrified her. To stand beside her own pain, hung on walls, judged by strangers. But something inside her, maybe the same part that had picked up the paint tin, whispered, do it anyway. She called the collection Fragments of a Life. Opening night, she wore a simple black dress and no jewelry. She stood quietly in the back corner, watching people cry in front of her work, not because they knew her story, but because somehow it echoed theirs. By the end of the night, she'd sold 5 pieces, received 3 commissions, and 2 gallery offers abroad. The months that followed were filled with a new kind of busyness, not errands or charity auctions, but paint, texture, story. She traveled, Paris, Vienna, New York, always returning to her little studio now filled with light and life. She wasn't rich. She wasn't famous, but she was full. She'd lost a marriage, a name, a role, but she'd found something far more precious, herself. Not the younger version with dreams deferred, but the older, wiser artist who had lived through grief and turned it into color. Her second act wasn't tidy, it wasn't polished, but it was real, and it was hers. If this story resonated with you, you're not alone. There's a canvas waiting in all of us, a life that doesn't need permission, only truth. Subscribe to Narrated by Abby for more stories like this, stories of falling apart and falling back together. Like this video, share it with someone rebuilding, and tell us in the comments, what part of your story still needs color?